This is the Samsung Galaxy Note 9, and I know, this phone came out almost 4 months ago. It's really nothing new, so you're probably wondering why am I making a video on this now? Well, interesting enough, the Note 9 has actually been my daily Android driver from August up until mid-October when the Pixel 3 XL came out, and in that amount of time, and even after switching to the Pixel, I realized how good of a device this actually was, and still is. And for that reason alone, I think it deserves an in-depth ZONEofTECH review. So in this video, I'll be covering the design, the display, the camera, the performance, special features, battery, and so much more when it comes to my 3+ month of usage experience. So get some snacks ready and enjoy what I really think is the best package in a smartphone in 2018. Starting off with the design, Samsung made a similar move to the one they've done with the S9 from the S8, as in the design looks extremely similar to the previous generation, in this case, the Samsung Galaxy Note 8. However, instead of Samsung making the bezels a bit thinner, like they did with the move from the S8 to the S9, the Note 9 actually has thicker side bezels than the Note 8 did. Wait. What? Well, Samsung did this in order to eliminate accidental touch rejection, and I have to say, coming from the S8 or the S9, the Note 9 has the best accidental touch rejection so far, but it's not because Samsung did a major software improvement, it's just because of the thicker bezels. And I do like it in terms of the functionality, not so much in terms of the design. I still think that the Note 8 or the S9 actually look better than the Note 9. Also, the edges are not as curved anymore. Remember the always-on clock on the edge display of the Samsung Galaxy S7 Edge, for example? I used that all the time when I was sleeping as a night clock, and I cannot do that anymore with the Note 9. Samsung seems to have killed the edge panel because of accidental touches, but yeah, other than that, I do love the design of the Note 9, especially my model here, which is the ocean blue variant. The way the back reflects the light is just stunning. It's not a full gradient like some other phones, but you do get different variations in terms of the brightness of the back, again, depending on how the light is reflected. And then the S Pen itself is actually yellow on this model, and it's not just that, but when you draw with the S Pen, the color of the pen itself is also yellow, and if you have a different colored S Pen, it would be the color of that S Pen, the drawing. So yeah, absolutely love Samsung's attention to detail when it comes to this. And then Samsung's also the only major smartphone manufacturer that has not adopted a notch yet. So I do like this, but I feel like the Note 9 is already outdated in terms of the design. And I'm not talking about the lack of a notch, but the bottom chin, the side bezels, which like I've said before, they're actually thicker than the Note 8, I feel like this is a downgrade. Now in terms of how it feels in the hand, the Note 9 is indeed a massive phone, so compared to my XS Max, the Note 9 actually feels a bit bigger because, you know, it is bigger, it is wider as well, and also thicker, yet it comes with a smaller 6.4 versus 6.5 inch display. Speaking of the display, it's a 6.4 inch 2960 by 1440 pixels in resolution at 516 ppi, and it's amazing. It's very sharp, very bright, not as bright as the XS Max, interesting enough, but you can even tweak the colors in the settings for that vibrant Samsung look or a more true-to-life color, like something like on the iPhones or the Pixels. And yeah, like I said, it's honestly an outstanding display. I just wish that Samsung would release a smartphone with a 4K or even higher resolution panel, obviously for VR, because, you know, Samsung actually has the best mobile VR experience on the market with the Gear VR, but then even on the Note 9's 516 ppi display, you can still count the individual pixels when you're in VR. Also, by default, the Note 9 comes with a Full HD Plus resolution rather than Quad HD Plus, interesting enough, which is a bit surprising. This is indeed done in order to preserve the battery life, but Samsung phones are the only ones to output at a lower resolution than what they can actually do. So do make sure that you enable this in the settings if you want to get the clearest possible picture on your Samsung phone. And speaking of pictures, we have the camera. So with the Note 9, Samsung's using the exact same camera system that I've used in the S9 earlier this year. We get the two camera modules on the back. So we have a regular module and then an f2.4 telephoto or zoom module that allows you to achieve that 2x optical zoom. But what's really cool here is that the main module actually has two apertures, an f1.5 as well as an f2.4 aperture, and they actually automatically switch depending on how much light gets to the sensor. So for example, at night, it would use the f1.5 aperture, while at day it would actually use the f2.4 one to give you a sharper looking image. I mean, really, the only complaint that I have here is that when you're taking a photo of, let's say, a flower in the daytime, you want a very shallow depth of field, and you have to manually switch to the f1.5 aperture if you want to do that, because otherwise the bokeh would be almost gone because of the f2.4 aperture that Note 9 would use, since, you know, that's actually sharper. But yeah, other than that, this is an amazing camera. Samsung did improve the HDR processing with the Note 9, by the way, even though it's the same module as the Note 9, as the S9, they've tweaked the software a bit. But yeah, I just wish that they would have released the software update to the S9, especially since they come with the exact same specs and the same camera, but they haven't. Now, when it comes to the low light, it's not as good as the Pixel 3, especially with the new night side mode, and the HDR isn't as good as the iPhone XS Max's HDR or the Pixel 3's HDR, but this camera has literally everything you need in a smartphone camera. You know, you have 4K 60 video, which the Pixel 3 is lacking. You have a full microSD card support, so you know, when you're on a holiday and you want to take a ton of photos, you just pop in a 512 microSD card and you're good to go. Then the panoramas look great. Portrait mode works very well. The front-facing camera is wide enough and really good in low light as well. And on top of all this, you do get a full manual mode, which you can use to manually select your aperture, shutter speed, ISO, and so on, and you know, get that perfect shot that you've always wanted. This is a pretty big deal because the iPhones do not offer this, the Google Pixels do not offer this either. So yeah, there's not that many smartphones that offer a full manual mode in the main camera app, but luckily the Note 9 is one of them. However, I do have one pretty big complaint when it comes to the Note 9's camera, and that is the fact that it can only do 5 minutes, guys, of 4K 60 video. I'm not even joking. All the other phones can record for an unlimited amount of time, obviously until, you know, they run out of storage. And the Note 9, the phone that actually supports 512 gigabytes of microSD card, so you can have 1 terabyte of storage on this thing, it can only do 5 minutes of 4K 60 video. And then if you drop the frame rate to 4K 30, it can still only do 10 minutes of continuous recording, which is a joke. This is a huge downside. It's a reason why I'm not using my Note 9 as my main smartphone camera. This is why whenever I record video, I would use my iPhone XS Max or the Pixel 3, just because those phones, they don't have any recording limitations. Okay, so now let's talk about the performance. So I've had quite a few Samsung phones. My first Samsung flagship being the S4, and then I had the S7 Edge, the S8 Plus, the S9 Plus, the S9, and with all of these phones, my main issue was always the performance. Samsung has a ton of bloatware and they lagged like crazy. The whole user experience was one of the worst I've had on any phone. But luckily, this isn't really a problem anymore with the Note 9. In fact, the Note 9 was the first Samsung phone that I've used that literally had 0 lag issues. I'm quite impressed, honestly. Finally, Samsung. Finally. I've had performance issues with the S9 Plus, not a lot, but with the Note 9, everything is so fluid. Even though we have the exact same processor in the S9 Plus and the Note 9, the XS9810 or the Snapdragon 845 for US and Canada models, among with 6GB of RAM on both, the Note 9 actually felt way more fluid. Samsung does make some small software tweaks, which I mentioned before in the camera, in their Samsung Experience overlay with each new phone that they release, and most of these improvements are not sent to older models, not even to those ones that have literally the exact same specs. Same processor, same amount of RAM, and the same camera, and the same flash storage and everything. Those phones don't receive those updates, which really sucks. And then the baseline Note 9 now comes in 128GB of storage, and then you also have the 512GB model, which is absolutely insane. And then keep in mind that you can also add a microSD card up to 512GB of storage, and you can have 1 terabyte of internal storage on the 512GB model, which is crazy on a smartphone. But honestly, I feel like that's way too much. Even 128GB is too much, considering that all your photos that you take are automatically deleted from your phone and stored to the cloud anyways. Also, if you have a 512GB model, you also get 8GB of RAM instead of 6, so you know, you get the extra perk. So performance-wise, I was actually surprised, but when it comes to the famous Samsung bloatware that plagued all the previous models and slowed them down considerably, most of it is actually still there. We still get a Samsung calendar, a Samsung calculator, clock, messages, Samsung mail, even a Samsung photo gallery, all of which, you know, you have much better alternatives made by Google anyways. I mean, Samsung even has a Samsung Galaxy Store, which is crazy, literally a much dumber and simpler version of the Google Play Store with obviously significantly less apps. But yeah, we have it for whatever reason. And then the hardware Bixby button is still here, so that's very frustrating. Even after 3 full months of use, I accidentally hit it now and then. So yeah, that's a problem, obviously. Samsung's bloatware is honestly the main reason why my Note 9 got replaced by the Pixel 3 XL as soon as I got my hands on it. Samsung just tries to give you so much of their own apps when Google's already doing a much better job, and you end up with like 2-3 messaging apps and, you know, 2-3 copies of pretty much every single app. But luckily the Note 9 is powerful enough so that Samsung's bloatware isn't slowing it down anymore. But don't get tricked, all that bloatware is still here. But in all that bloatware, there's gotta be at least something that makes the Note 9 unique in some sort of way. So what special features does it come with? Well, probably the biggest and most unique one has to be not Bixby, not the S Pen, but actually Samsung's DeX. So DeX used to be a dock that you had to put in your Samsung phone into, and you could connect to a monitor, a keyboard, a mouse, and it actually booted into the Samsung desktop UI, you know, Samsung DeX. That's how it was called, and it was cool, but you don't even need the dock anymore. So you can literally just connect your Note 9 directly to a USB Type-C adapter, plug in an HDMI cable, and connect it to a monitor. And then when you're into the new DeX UI, Samsung now lets you use the Note 9 as a trackpad as well as even a keyboard, so you don't even need those anymore. So yeah, if you ever wanted to turn your smartphone into a desktop as soon as you got home from work, the Note 9 is literally the perfect phone for that. So yeah, don't expect to play any AAA games on this because, you know, it's still Android, but you do get the full version of Chrome here, and you can even download the full version of Microsoft Office here. So yeah, that's really impressive. And I haven't seen a single reviewer talk about DeX that much. And honestly, it's a great feature to have. Definitely the most impressive one from the Note 9, I would say, by far. And then we have Bixby, which, even though is still far behind even Apple Siri, it is still better than any assistant when it comes to doing OS-specific functions. So you can tell it to, you know, turn off Wi-Fi and maximize the brightness and things like that. Siri or the Google Assistant, they cannot do that. And then we get a feature that makes the Note a Note, and that is the S Pen. So with the Note 9, the biggest change here is that the S Pen now gets its own battery as well as Bluetooth. So, you know, you get features such as playing and pausing a video from the S Pen remote or going to the next slide in a presentation and so on. Now, most of these are actually pointless. They're pretty cool, but they're pretty pointless. I mean, come on, you're never going to use any of those, trust me. But then there are some pretty cool ones, such as when you take your S Pen out, you can immediately start writing on the actual display on the AMOLED panel and then save these in Samsung Notes. However, this is where the issues start. To take full advantage of the S Pen, you need to use Samsung Notes. If you use Google Keep or Evernote or anything else, not only will you have serious lag to the point where you'll end up not using the S Pen at all, just because of how bad the lag is, but you'll be missing out on a ton of features such as the eraser when you're holding on the side button, pressure sensitivity, and much more. Okay, Daniel, so you have to use Samsung Notes. What's the problem here? Well, the problem is that Samsung Notes only works with Samsung phones. And it's not just that, but they only work on mobile. So if you're trying to access your notes from, I don't know, your laptop, you cannot do that. So as long as you're accepting the fact that your notes from the Note 9 would be stored locally, pretty much the same as if you had a physical notebook, then the S Pen is a great tool. But otherwise, if you're like me and you have a ton of devices and you need apps that are compatible with all of them, then the S Pen is pretty much useless. Yes, you can get plugins to get, you know, Google Keep to sync with the S Pen, but it's not the same thing. And then aside from the S Pen, there's still a ton of features that the Note 9 comes with. For example, VR is also possible now on the Note 9 with the Gear VR. Like I said, microSD card support, wireless charging. We also get fast charging including inside a box. We get 512 gigabytes of storage, the always-on display with a ton of customization when compared to the always-on display on the Google Pixels, for example. And then in general, Samsung phones actually give you the most amount of customization on any smartphone. You can, you know, customize this in any way you want, from reducing the font size to literally changing the actual resolution of the display. The Note 9 is actually the closest smartphone to an actual laptop than any other smartphone out there, especially with DeX dock. And then the battery life is also really, really good. So it comes with a monster of a battery, 4000 mAh. So especially if you keep the resolution to Full HD Plus, the default, then this phone has the best battery life on any flagship smartphone that I've used. Also, when I'm traveling, I'm using my phone a lot, all the time, and the Note 9 managed to last me for almost an entire duration of a full day of trip. So yeah, which I cannot say the same about any other smartphone that I've used, so that gets a plus. So yeah, in conclusion, what's my verdict on the Samsung Galaxy Note 9? Well, honestly, the Note 9 is literally the Swiss Army knife of smartphones. It comes with so many features, more than any other phone out there. The main downside, of course, the updates. Samsung phones are almost an entire year late, sometimes even more than that, when it comes to software updates. And like I've said before, even though your S9 and Note 9 have the exact same specs, same camera, same processor, same amount of RAM, apart from the 512GB model of the Note 9, the Note 9 has some extra software features which could have been easily added to the S9, but they weren't. So with Samsung, the phone that you get is the phone that you get. Don't expect any major updates or changes, and if they do come, expect them very, very late. Also, I feel like Samsung's a bit stuck in the past when it comes to local storage. I mean, yes, 512 gigabytes on a smartphone is insane. 1 terabyte of storage is even more insane, and that's not really a problem that I'm talking about. The problem is that most of Samsung's software, Samsung Notes, Samsung Health, Samsung's Gallery app, those are all local, so you cannot continue to use those services from a laptop. Obviously, they're still backed to the cloud, but you cannot access the cloud aside from, you know, a Samsung phone. And that's a huge problem. Samsung is really the only manufacturer that has not yet embraced a full cloud service. Everyone keeps saying that iOS is restricted, and it actually is a lot. But did you guys know that you can actually use iCloud Photo Library, the Apple Calendar, Keynote Pages, and so on the browser on Windows, Android devices, and any device you want? Not a lot of people know that. But with Samsung, you need a Samsung device for all of their first-party services, and if you're okay with that, then the Note 9 is literally the best feature-packed phone on the market that you can buy. If not, you can actually still use, you know, Google apps on this. You're not restricted when it comes to that, so you can still use Google apps. It's just that the S Pen functionality would be affected. Other than that, amazing device, definitely the most amount of features you get for how much it costs. But let me know in the comments, what do you guys think about the Note 9? Also, if you have enjoyed this video, definitely subscribe, and notifications take quite some time to make, so all of your feedback on content like this is really appreciated. And if you have enjoyed this video and the channel, do consider joining the Zone. Tap the join button, become a member, you support the channel, and you also get access to some pretty cool exclusive features such as badges that actually evolve over time, and also some priority comments in the live streams. I'm doing a live stream every single month at the end of the month. And yeah, this has been pretty much it. So thank you for watching. Please like if you enjoyed it, let me know. I'm Daniel, and I'll see you guys in the next video. ZONEofTECH, signing out. Cheers.